Started. Again, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. This is the Ultravox AI channel on YouTube. My name is Ben Lauer, and I'm the head of developer relations here. And this is part three, the final installment in a three-part series. We tried to do part three earlier this week. We actually had people join. We had a very lively discussion. We did some consulting on apps and design, but I actually ran into some issues with environment variables. And so I couldn't actually finish working through the code and decided to just kind of reschedule and not go through all of that troubleshooting live. Turned out I just had to restart VS Code, even though I had changed the environment variable. So if you run into that, just restart. That's kind of a foolproof plan for a lot of things. So what we're going to do today is we're going to pick it up with, I think it was on slide 6 here. No, sorry, we already did incoming calls. So in part three, want to go over how would you construct an outgoing call. So if you recall, we're building a virtual receptionist. In part one, we set up the receptionist. We gave a basic prompt. We did some calls. In part two, we added a RAG source so that we could give the agent or the receptionist in this case detailed information about the swimming and soccer programs at the community center. We also put more information into the prompt about upcoming events so that the receptionist could answer those types of questions. And then we gave the receptionist the ability to transfer the call to another phone number. So in our case here, we said, hey, if somebody calls and they're upset, transfer them to a human, or if they have more, they need more details about the swimming program, transfer them. So that's what we did in parts one and two. So here in part three, what we're going to do is go through how would you improve the agent's capabilities so that we can make outgoing phone calls to remind students of their upcoming lessons. So you could see this applying in lots of cases. Maybe you needed to proactively call out to your employees because you wanted to have a voice AI see how things are going, check in on employee sentiment. Maybe you have some type of a medical or dental practice and you want to have a voice AI call out and remind people. So there's lots of scenarios where we want to do these kind of outgoing calls. But in our example here with the community center, we're doing it to remind people of upcoming lessons. So again, the way we are structuring this is to have a daily job that runs. It hits our application. We get upcoming lessons that are in the next 3 days using the cal.com API. And then what we do is we loop through for each of those upcoming appointments. We're giving our receptionist here the ability to transfer the call, but we're also giving this new tool for changing the appointment. And then we connect the call through Twilio, excuse me, and then we can modify lesson appointments. I will just say I've already, given that we kind of started through this on a couple days ago with the first attempt at session three, I went ahead and finished up the code. So I'm not going to be writing the code live, but I'm going to step through sort of the key parts, and then I'll point out where you might want to pick it up and kind of take it further. So again, just as a reminder, if people confirm, hey, great, we can end the call. If they need to reschedule, if there's a conflict, we can do that. So again, we can start. Let me move my cell. Oops, that's the wrong window to move. I don't know why it keeps grabbing that one. Let's get that out of the way. So we confirm that we're talking to the student. If we're not, we end the call. If we are, let's confirm the lesson. If they confirm that they're still available, we end the call. If not, we try to reschedule or cancel the lesson. So let's look over at VS Code here. And let me go in and zoom this a little bit because it looks like it's kind of small. That looks pretty good. So let's just minimize this down. Okay, so as you can see here, I've I've expanded the README, so there's quite a bit of detail here. I'm going to update this link as soon as this stream is done, so this recording will be available. But the README is very detailed. It takes you through all the setup things. Again, if you want to run the code as it's currently written, you're going to need to provide the Ultravox API key. You get that with your free Ultravox account that you create. You're also going to need a cal.com API key and event type ID. You're going to need your Twilio credentials. Uh, you're going to need a Twilio phone number. This is so that we can make those outgoing phone calls. And then this destination phone number is what I put in for transferring the calls. So we could have multiple destination phone numbers or whatever. And then again, we're using ngrok for local development. So for production use, we want to push this out to a more permanent location. You could just change the tools base URL and the environment variable here. Let's see if there's anything else to call out here. Um, yeah, I think this is all pretty self-explanatory. If you start taking a look at this and you have questions, just reach out in Discord and our server there, or open an issue in the repo. So first of all, let's take a look at this daily reminders YAML file. This is really simple. If you have not used GitHub Actions, I really like them for tasks like this because you get a very generous free allowance. And essentially what we're doing here is we've got this script that runs every morning. We could change this and say, oh, only run on certain days or whatever. I just said, hey, run every day at 9 a.m. Pacific time. It is translated because GitHub Actions use UTC, so you have to do the conversion to your time zone. And then it just does a curl command. It does a post to our URL to the send lesson reminders endpoint. And I'm going to show this in a minute. So pretty simple. There's a lot more we could do with this. We could beef this up with additional error checking. If it failed, we could have it send us an email or a Slack message or whatever. But this is just sort of our bare bones scheduler. So what else have we done? If you joined us in parts 1 and 2, I actually was getting a little bit frustrated in part 2 because the server, once it was running, didn't refresh itself in sort of this like automated fashion, right? So sometimes you want like hot module reloading. I went ahead and added that using nodemon. So you'll see there's now a nodemon config file, which is just looking in the routes folder. It's watching index.js and then our .env file if we were to happen to change our URL or anything there, and it'll just automatically kind of restart the application, which is nice. So let's take a look here. First of all, at our index, I don't think we've really changed anything in the index file since session 2, except for adding in the database. And so this db.js file, this is essentially just creating an in-memory database using SQLite here for our purposes. If you were going to roll this out to production, I would highly recommend something more durable. But essentially, you can see there's this initialization that looks at this schema.sql file. And so this is in the data file or data folder. And the schema just creates a single table where we're keeping track of our students, their contact info, and then their emergency contact info. Again, because we're doing sports lessons, we also have an optional field here for skill level and notes. And then we've got some indices created for faster searching. We also have this fictional students CSV file. So it's a bunch of AI generated student names and fictional phone numbers and whatnot. And then we've also got this ICS file of upcoming lessons. So I imported this into my calendar. And then if we jump back to this database file, you can see we initialize our database and then we bring in all of the students from that CSV file. So there's a function to do that. And then we've got some additional functions here for looking up students and whatnot. So again, we're doing this bit so that we want to keep track of our students separately so that we weren't storing all of their contact info in the calendar. You could design this differently, but I thought it was simplest just to have the calendar items essentially just say it's the student name and then their email address, and then we can match that. Or sorry, I'm putting the student ID, and then we can match that up with the contact info from the database, get the phone number, and then make the call. So there's multiple ways to do this. So you might find a better way for your scenario. So looking back at the code here, but now before I jump out of the DB file, actually maybe we should just pause for a second. Let me see. I don't see any questions so far, so feel free to ask questions in the chat. But also we are using inside the Ultravox Discord, there is a voice channel called Live Stream, and if you want to join that channel, we can unmute you and allow you to ask questions over audio if that's easier. So continuing through the code. So we've talked about the scheduler, we've talked about setting up our database. So then back inside of index.js, we essentially create our database, we import the students, and then we've got the same routes that we had before, routes for Twilio and cal.com. But we've made a couple of changes in addition. So this, you may remember when we looked at the scheduler, we had the send lesson reminders endpoint. So let's take a look at that. So inside here, we kept, I think these were all here after session 2, check availability, create booking, upcoming bookings, session, or sorry, send lesson reminders. And I did put a note in here. In production, you should secure this endpoint. You don't want to have an open endpoint on the internet where anyone who finds it can just hit it and then trigger outgoing phone calls to your customers. So I didn't put that in here. I didn't want to add that complication because this is just sort of sample code, but you would want to put some sort of like auth header in here with some sort of a secure token to make sure that you validated that before actually executing this code. But here you can see we're just sort of defaulting to 3 if nobody, or sorry, if we don't pass in this days parameter. So we're just looking 3 days out. We then call this function get upcoming bookings, and then we then pass in the result from that into this merge bookings with student info. So this uh, get upcoming bookings, this is just using the cal.com API, and it's just hitting the cal bookings endpoint, it's passing in these params for start and end time and event type ID, and then it's returning that list. And then what we do is we call this function merge bookings with student info. And this is where we actually then for each of those bookings that comes back, we get we look in here for the student info for the email address, and then we get the additional information out of our database. So this is where we do our database query to get the student by email, and then we essentially merge that data. So then we maintain our booking info, and then we add the student info. So then we return that as a single object. Actually, we return an array of those objects that are combined. And then down here a bit more, we then look through each of those merged results, and then we create a lesson reminder config. And so actually, let's just look at this for a second. This is actually up at the top. And here we essentially are just saying, let me wrap this text. Hey, your name is Steve, da 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 da, you are calling. And so you can see we're actually creating a prompt for our Ultravox voice AI agent that's dynamically bringing in the student information and their booking information. And so we're basically just saying, hey, you're calling this person on the phone to remind them of their upcoming appointment. And this actually is an event type. So this is actually a swim lesson. And so then we tell our agent, introduce yourself, confirm you're talking to the student or their emergency contact, so like their parent or guardian. And then if you are talking to one of them, call this tool confirm lesson time. If they're not available, say you'll call back later. If you get voicemail, leave a message. So I tested all this out. It works as you expect. I've got a lot of voicemails on my on my personal phone from this virtual receptionist, right? Who's just like, "Hey, this is Steve calling." Da 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 da. But looking back at the code here, this you can see here we've given it this selected tool called confirm lesson time, and then we're passing in this static parameter. And so remember, in Ultravox real time, static parameters are parameters that we know the value to, and we don't want the model to decide. If we want the model to decide based on the context of the conversation, we use a dynamic parameter. So here with the static parameter, we're passing in this lesson object because we want that information to be available inside of this tool in this code, confirm lesson time. So we also are passing in the name of the person that we're talking to. So this confirm lesson time, you can see this is another endpoint that we've exposed. And if I scroll down here, we can get into this. So actually, first of all, this note I put, um, we've got this feature in Ultravox real time called call stages. Call stages allows you to essentially do this very logical progression of a call. If you want to say, hey, really attend, you want the model's full attention on a small topic or a task, you can break that into this stage, or you might think of it as a multi-prompt agent. And so again, what we want to do is we want to say, right now we've kicked off the call and we've said, hey, this is why we're calling. I want to confirm that I'm talking to the student or their parent. Yes. So we've confirmed we're talking to them. Remember in our slides, we we basically said, hey, let's make sure that we're talking to the student. And then if we are, let's confirm. So in this case, we're changing the call stage in our code to this bit here where we're now confirming the lesson time. And so then in this code, it's very simple. What we do, and you can see here, we're not actually using this contact name. So we could delete that, but I thought we'd probably want to use it at some point. And what we're doing here is we're saying to Ultravox, okay, now we're going to change the prompt so that it's targeted just on confirming the lesson. So we now say to the model, continue the call. Your job now is to confirm the lesson. If they can make the lesson, then you must thank them, say goodbye, and then call the hang up tool. If they cannot make the lesson, you must call the reschedule lesson tool. So again, back in our slides, this is where we're seeing, okay, so again, we can't, they say they can't make it, now we want to reschedule. Okay, so this is the code is just kind of mapping to this flow that I put together on logically how we want to step through everything. So then we do this stage to confirm the lesson. We now have provided the hang up tool. This is a built-in tool into Ultravox Real-Time. And then we're giving this new temporary tool called reschedule lesson. And we're also then passing in this contact name again. So the reschedule lesson tool, I kind of time boxed myself for doing this project because I have like some other things that I'm working on. But basically, inside of the reschedule lesson tool, you'll see the prompt says, your job now is to reschedule the lesson. This is where you should say the code needs to be added to implement the rescheduling. So if you actually run this and you actually do this call, Steve will say, hey, this is where you need to add code to implement the rescheduling. So I did take a bit of a pass here. I didn't fully implement the rescheduling logic, but this is where we would put in the prompt, hey, you need to call this function or you need to do this thing, right? Basically, what I would do here is I would say something like, okay, you need to present the student with like 3 options, see if one of those work. If so, book it. If not, ask them to call back in a month or whatever. So it kind of depends on the scenario what you want to do. But you can see then how we're using these stages to kind of go through everything. And then I believe in the Twilio file, let's see, we had the transfer active call. Yes, we added this because back inside of the cal.js file, you can see up here we're importing this make outbound call from Twilio. So then here, let me just see if there was anything. I think this was all, yeah, this was all content. Oh, so we have a make outbound call endpoint that gets exposed. Um, but then we actually call this function. Actually, now that I'm looking at this, I think maybe this make outbound call, um, is this actually used anywhere? Let's look. That might just be in here for my testing. Yeah, yeah, this was just something I had in here for testing, so I think this can just be ignored. So I'll put a note on that and put that into the repo. But then if we go back up here to this make outbound call code, it's taking in a phone number, a system prompt, and selected tools array. And then inside here, again, we have this create Ultravox call that we have been using in the prior sessions. And then we're essentially just saying, hey, we're using this prompt that we pass in, the tools we pass in, and then create this call. It's an outbound call. I put a note in here that says consider hard coding your own number here for testing. So right now, if we were to execute this, this is going to use one of those fake like 555, 212, whatever numbers that we put into the fake student data. So when I was testing this, I just hard coded this to my personal cell phone number. And then it would call me and say like, hey, I'm calling to talk to Ethan or talk to Sarah or whoever the student was. Um, and then that's it. That's essentially everything that we needed to do to finish off stage three or part three. If there's interest, let me know. I'm sure I can find some more time to add those additional the additional code for full rescheduling and the lesson cancellation. But I think you can probably also figure that out given that we've shown the pattern here and the progression. So any questions? Let me look over here at the chat. Oh, hey Karen, how you doing? Welcome. Sinners fan, welcome. Uh, I also, in case you missed it, I said that if you wanted to pop into our Discord, there's a live stream channel. And if you want to get in there, I can unmute you and you could talk to me live here in the call. Um, but I've just gone through all the code. I called out all the highlights. The code is all on GitHub. But let me see here what these questions are. So Sinners fan is asking, is there any way we can use and do feature extractions via the APIs? I think I need a little bit more context here, Sinners fan, what you mean by feature extractions. I think you might mean if there's some way you can ask the caller like their address or their name or something like that. Is that what you mean? So maybe you can clarify in the chat or jump into the voice chat in Discord and we can um, I can give a better answer there. And then I see Peter is asking, uh, it's not currently tracking if the lesson was successfully confirmed, right? Um, Correct. So I think this would be like an exercise for you to do. Um, I mean, I was thinking about all this, like in the real world, our database probably would we would want to have a couple additional tables. We'd probably want to have a table for all of the outbound calls that we're doing. If we left a message, did they confirm or not? So there's probably additional data you would want to track. not currently doing that, but I think you could pretty easily, add another table to the database schema that we had, and then add that logic into our functions. I think that'd be pretty straightforward to do, but yeah, I think that's a good call out. Hey, Sky Bluer, welcome. So yeah, let's see. Hey, thanks. Sky Bluer saying Ultravox is an amazing tool. Thank you. Um, Glad to hear you like it. So yeah, I'm happy to hang out here for a little bit longer. If there's more questions, Sinners fan, if you're still there and you want to expand a little bit on what you mean by feature extraction, I'm happy to cover that more. I do. There is about a 5 second delay um, between what I say and by the time you hear it. Could be longer depending on what part of the world you're in. Um, so I'm just going to sit here and watch the chat if there's any more questions. And I'm happy to also, if you want to share more, if you can share more about what you're building, I'm also happy to, give input and feedback and whatnot if you have questions on that. Okay, so Peter just is asking a question about RAG and wants to know how our homegrown solution is different from other open source or commercial vector databases. Um, at its basic level, Peter, it's not different at all. I mean, essentially, and I need to hear from the team. I think we're on the cusp of shipping our new what we're going to call Corpus service. So that's going to be any day that'll be available, and you can test it out. But essentially, what we do in our service, we provide you the ability to do, you can give us a website URL. Actually, let me take a step back. So think of it like this. A corpus is a collection of sources. It can be one or more sources. A source is simply a URL for a website, or it's a document. It can be a text document, it can be a PDF, that kind of thing. And so for a given corpus, you can give us multiple sources. And so you could imagine it being something like, here's the website for my company for our products. Here's another URL for our community forum or our support knowledge base or whatever. And then here's a PDF document that's like our internal customer support, Q&A type of thing. It's what we give our people, and we train them on what to say. So you could create those three sources, and then what do? We will go crawl those URLs, and we will go. Don't quote me on this because the final version hasn't shipped, but I think our plan is to hit the URL that you give us. We'll crawl that page, and then any links on that page, we'll go crawl those pages as well. And then I'm not sure if we go one more level deep or if we're just keeping it to two levels. But essentially, we crawl and we ingest all of that content into a vector database. For documents, we do the same thing. We essentially chunk these documents up and we bring them into a vector database. And then we give you a tool that you can give to your agent. So just like we showed there, where we were giving it the hang up tool, or we were giving it the in session two, we had the knowledge lookup tool. I'm not sure exactly what the final tool name is going to be called, but you'll essentially just add this tool that we provide to your agent's selected tools array. And then in that tool, you'll say which corpus do you want to use. And then anytime in the conversation, the agent can then just call that tool. The agent will decide what the query is to run. We then do a semantic search, semantic similarity search in the underlying vector database. We return back chunks and we give those to the agent, and then the agent has that as additional context in the conversation. So I'd say it's not any different than other solutions you're using. If you already have a RAG corpus that you're happy with, there's no reason to change to using ours unless we are going to really focus on low latency for ours because we think in real-time voice conversations, latency does matter. So, maybe you'd be motivated based on that, but practically speaking, you can just create a tool, give that tool to your agent, and then just have that point out at your existing RAG solution, and that should work just fine. So let me know if that answers the question or not. But I think that's a good summary of all that. Yeah, thanks, Eli. Appreciate it. Okay, so let's see. Peter is asking another question. Any plans on making the tool configuration less cumbersome? I feel you on that. Um, for example, or that is have support for this in your SDKs with supporting objects, so you don't need to define and manage a bunch of JSON. Well, I do feel you. It is a little bit cumbersome, and I do think that when I'm showing, and let me jump back to the code for a second because I think this will help make the point. When I'm showing in our sample code in the docs or here inside of, excuse me, inside of something like this VS Code solution. So let's look back at our confirm lesson time. So when we look at this, you're like, oh my gosh, all this right here is a tool. Now, the reason I show it this way is because I want to show, in my experience, a temporary tool. So again, in Ultravox, we have two types, actually, there's three kinds of tools. We have built-in tools that are just available. But then when you create a custom tool, you can do it one of two ways. You can create a durable tool, which, hello, you can create a durable tool. Let me close my door here. Um, and that durable tool is then available to you across additional sessions. You can put a durable tool in your account. You can use it in multiple agents if that's what you want to do. Um, a temporary tool here is just inside of this particular session, this particular agent. I like using temporary tools for actually, let me go back to the code here. I like using temporary tools because for development, like as I'm building out an agent and I'm trying to figure out like how it all should work, I don't like persisting the durable tool in the session and then going and updating that. It feels faster to me to just change it in code here. But then when I get it dialed in, I can then take this temporary tool and then I can use our REST API and just create this as a durable tool. And so then a durable tool, if this was created as a durable tool, I'd be able to call it almost as easily as this hang-up tool. So this hang up tool, I mean, literally, I just say tool name hang up. Now it's because hang up doesn't have, we don't have to give it any properties. But if this was a durable tool for reschedule lesson, I would then just call it just like this. I would just call it reschedule lesson. So sorry, that's the tool name. And then I could pass in, I would still then just have to put in like this. I'd have to put in like my parameters, like I'd put those in here, but it'd be way less like all this, like this would all be hidden away in so it does simplify things. So Peter, I don't know if that helps at all, but I still think even beyond that, there's still an opportunity for us to make it simpler. um, I don't love all the details in the schema. I think there's got to be an easier way. If you have specific thoughts on that or things you'd like to see, let us know. We're definitely open to suggestions. We felt like what we wanted to do initially is just like make sure we get a really robust system that has the critical capabilities, and then we're going to work to refine that. But yeah, I feel you on that being a little bit overwhelming. One last thing on tools, and if there's any other questions, I'd love to hear them. The if you are using our SDK, you have the ability to do what we call client implemented tools. So you don't have to then host all of your code on an HTTP endpoint like we were doing there. You can actually just host a function or put all your logic just in your client code, and then that can be called through the SDK. So if you don't want to, put everything on the public internet. All right. So any other questions? So another question here, any plans on having integrations with existing agent frameworks like Crew AI? Feels like this could be a very powerful combo. I got to look into Crew. I haven't heard of that one. I got a request earlier this week for integrating with a different framework with LangGraph. We're not actively working on that, although I can see that being something that would be really useful. So it's kind of on our radar. It's something I think we'll probably look closer at in the coming weeks. We got a lot on our plate right now too that we're focused on. We're working on a new version of the model, should be coming out any day now. This corpus service that we've talked about. We've got a couple other things in the hopper. But I do think some way to integrate into these frameworks um, would be useful. I think we just got to look at it more closely and see what we would have to do there. So I'll make a note of Crew and add that to the list. Okay, think I'm going to make last call. If you've got any more questions or feedback, please post them into the YouTube chat right now. Otherwise, I'm going to start wrapping up the session. Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it. I appreciate all your questions. I appreciate you coming. And yeah, like I said, let me know if you've got more thoughts or suggestions because we're very driven by our customers' needs. I would say most most everything we're working on right now has been customers like you getting in and saying, "Hey, we need this, we need that." I mean, one example, the next version of our model is adding support for dozens of new languages, human languages. We have 15 that we support today, but we had a bunch of customers internationally saying, "Hey, we need support for Bengali, we need support for Czech, we need support for Dutch." So those are all coming. I will say the caveat is we're not sure how good the support is. So we do really rely on customers using them and telling us like where things are having an issue, and then we can always get more training data for the next kind of training runs. So yeah, keep the feedback coming in, please. So with that, I think we'll wrap up. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Centers, Fan, Karen, Sky Bluer, Eli. Peter has one more thing that he's sharing here. I'll just read it out. Build a proof of concept recently with Twilio and OpenAI real time, and it sucked. So I'm excited to play more with Ultravox. We've heard that actually before. I think OpenAI real time is really good. But we've gotten feedback that people like our system better, they like the API better. I think it's just kind of depends on preferences a lot of times. So Peter, if you want to reach out in Discord, if you've got specific questions, or if you run into any issues, please let us know because we do have a lot of deployments, a lot of big deployments right now using Twilio, using Plivo, using Telnix, these telephony providers at big scale, and things are working well. So if you run into anything, please just reach out in Discord and we can help you. All right. Well, thanks everyone for your time and look forward to interacting again on a future live stream. So have a good rest of your day. Thanks.